We're building.
We're building. We're good.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Mark Francis from Murray Regional Tourism here to welcome you to today's webinar, the first of what will be 3 fantastic webinars to really help you engage and give you some practical tools in communicating with both through this hibernation period and then very much through the reactivation period. For today, we've got over 120 operators on board, which is fantastic. And it's just one of the support mechanisms that Murray Regional Tourism are really looking at to help you through this crisis event and very much help build your business on the other side of this. We've enlisted the help of our digital media expert, Hannah Stratham, who is with us. And she'll take you on a lovely journey today designed to give you some really practical tools to help your business put some things in place to help you deal with this at the moment. Hannah will talk you through the various layers and certainly build each webinar. So over the next 3 webinars, she'll really take you on a journey. I also just want to thank those that submitted some questions early on through the presentation. Hannah will cover those off. And I know throughout the process, you can use your chat function to raise any questions and subject to time, Hannah will be able to come back to those at the end. And just as I do hand over to Hannah, I do really just want to remind everybody to keep utilising some of our resources. So Murray Regional Tourism website, the Murray Regional Tourism Facebook page where there's a lot of insights going up. And also just raise with you that we're continuing to bring some additional webinars and things online and content for you. This is just one of our mechanisms to help you through this, and we're working on a much more broader strategy as well. So over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Mark. So hi, everyone. I'm Hannah, and I run a content marketing agency called Media Mortar, and we work with a number of tourism clients. So we've been really active across and very involved with what COVID-19 has meant for a lot of tourism operators. So just bear with me. I'm going to bring up our slides. Hope the tech plays along. There we go. We're in. So I guess just as a little bit of housekeeping as I go along today, there is down the bottom, there's a Q&A function and there's also a chat. So if you've got any questions, drop them in there and I'll probably cover them at the end. We're live recording this, so if there's anything that you want to re-listen to, that'll be there. Or if you have to duck away, take a phone call, whatever, you will be sent a video version of this. And then any questions I don't get to, I'll make sure that we answer them right at the start of our next webinar. And a big thank you to everyone who has sent their questions through. So I've addressed all of those throughout this presentation as well. So this is our first webinar and it's part of a series of 3. So sort of breaking down the 3 phases of the communication structure in response to this pandemic. So where I see us right now, we're in a real reset mode. It's also a hibernation mode, and it's probably one of the most challenging modes to some extent because we're in a position where we need to communicate and market travel when no one can travel. And I'm really cognizant of the fact that this is a real moving feast. So at the time of even preparing this, a lot of the travel restrictions have changed, or a lot of, I know we're having a big press conference on Friday, which I'm eager to tune into because that's going to, dictate what's going to happen next. So that has also been a really challenging part of communicating this. Webinar 2, we're going to look at the restart process. So what does that look like in your business? How do we get on that road to reactivation? How do we start, with some restrictions in place to get that communication out there? And then the 3rd webinar is what is the reactivation? What is that going to look like? Because the world is not going to be coming back in the same way that we left it post-COVID. And there's a lot of research that says some incredibly positive things about tourism, but there's equally a lot of businesses who won't come through this either. And I don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but we do need to be realistic about what this reactivation is going to look like, because it's not just, we're not coming back to exactly how we left things as well. I guess at the outset of this, I've got a lot of material to go through. I just wanted to be just remind you guys, as well as business owners and working in the tourism industry, to be very gentle with yourself over this time. If you find any of this material overwhelming or you're struggling with the communication, that's okay. No one has a degree in pandemic communication. It's the first time this has ever happened, and everyone is being asked to do so much more than they've ever had to do in their business. And I know this because I run, a tourism content marketing agency. I've been through the redundancies like you would have with your team. You've had to be an HR expert. You've had to navigate JobKeeper, JobSeeker, and suddenly get, a degree in financial control and Australian tax law. It's been overwhelming. And now layer into this, how to respond to in a pandemic is, on your communications channels. It's a lot to ask of people. So please be gentle with yourself. And if you only take a couple of things out of this, it's going to be a real win for your business, because what this is about is communicating through and marketing to get through to the other side and to mitigate some of that loss and to get back into the market faster. So that's what this is about today. So I just wanted to really start by just leveling everything and saying this is a temporary time of crisis. So we will come back from this in a very different way, of course, but this isn't, for a lot of people, this isn't the end. And I think a lot of people, when COVID started to come through, they just put everything on pause because they were so overwhelmed, and they were cutting a lot of their communications and a lot of their marketing because we didn't know what, we thought this was probably going to last a lot longer than perhaps it might, from a travel restriction point of view, that is. So this is temporary. What we need to do is work out what our long-term play is. So that's what I really want to focus these next 3 webinars is what's our long-term play when it comes to communicating through this, so we can get those gains and get that business back in so that we can get on our way again. So there's lots of positive signs for the reactivation. Australians want to travel closer to home, which is going to be a great thing for your market. I would say, though, if we've got 50% of Australians saying they want to travel domestically when restrictions lift, we know that they want to support local businesses. We know that coastal and regional areas are going to do a lot better than the cities. And we know that people are going to be really conscious of hygiene standards when these travel restrictions come back. But I think what we need to overlay for the Murray River is an understanding that your destination is an overnight destination by and large. It's not so much reliant on that day trip market. So we need to make sure that we are tapping into that, I guess, some of those unique selling points to the region to encourage people to come and choose you. And while this is going to be fantastic, there's not going to be the international competition that we've ever received or never had to compete with before. There is still 300,000 other domestic tourism businesses who are all going to be fighting for this same share. So we can't just sort of, open the restrictions and expect people to come. I do think there's a good argument that people will start traveling really quickly, but we still need to work hard for it because everyone else will be competing for the same pool. So in terms of the reactivation, that's where I think that it's going. And I think the reactivation will take a long time, and we need to be in it for the long term, because when international travel will come back at some stage, and that's when we need to fight probably even harder, because it'll be a very competitive market with flights will be dropping their prices for some international destinations to try and pick up their tourism spend that's been lost through this. So that's at this stage, and I'm really excited to present next week more about the reactivation, because there's so many new studies that are coming through every day on what that might look like. So what do we do now? This is the position we're in now. How do we capture these travellers? How do we get that 50% to come to the Murray River? What are we doing now? And how can we do it when no one can travel? This is the age-old question that every tourism business and tourism marketer is in at the moment. And we have to market. The answer is really simple. We have to go into market with some messaging. So what I want to take you through is what messaging is appropriate right now, and how can we put it into the hands of your consumers so that they show that intention to travel. So if this is the bell curve, what we know is that people will come, that's at the height of it, but it's too late to start communicating with people once these travel restrictions are left. You know, in terms of marketing, it is a lot faster to be able to market from a moving position than it is from a standing start. So I know a lot of people put everything on hold, and it's not too late to start to get that moving again. So that's what I really want to sort of encourage you to do through this, is look at a couple of ways that you can get your communications moving. So even though the world is in hibernation, what I really want to get out of this is please don't stop marketing. Marketing is a good cost to your business because the only purpose of marketing is to drive sales. And when you've got sales, you've got more money in the bank account. So it's a really, really good cost. And I appreciate that at the start of this, I did it in my business. I pulled everything. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where cash flow was going to land. So I pulled everything. Then once the dust sort of started to settle, I was able to reintroduce the things. Of course, not everything came back. We don't have the cash flow for that. But the things that still deliver really high impact, like our organic social media, that's a really important tool to bring back. Things like your email newsletter list, if you send regular communications, or even things that are offline, and this is still a form of marketing, is just picking up the phone to your customers. Starting to bring those things back now are really important to show that you care. While no one has been through a pandemic, what we have been through is several recessions, and there's a lot of marketing data, and I've got some links for you at the end of what happened in the GFC and in the 2009 USA recession, with what the brands who marketed through the recession came back a lot faster than the ones who just put everything on pause. And it's a lot to do with that momentum piece that I was talking about, because marketing is largely momentum. And if you pause everything, it's very difficult to pick it back up because other people replace you in the awareness phase or in the customer's mind. So this is your opportunity to build that trust with your customer right now. You can't sell to your customer right now, and that's really clear because people can't leave their homes, or they can't leave, in some states, a 50-kilometer radius. But what we can do is we can just stay aware, we can stay present, and we can show that we care. It's also really important to note that your competitors are likely to be pulling back their marketing budgets right now. So this is your opportunity to really level the playing field. And I've seen this if you'd asked me back in January, could you ever get to the top of Google for, accommodation along the Murray River? I would have said no. Honestly, I would have said no, because the OTAs, so that's the online travel agents, had owned that space, because they pay so much money for SEO. But if they are pulling back on those sorts of materials, it gives everyone an opportunity to market equally. And the good marketing, and the marketing that you're doing with a slow build, is going to make a real difference there, which is a really, not only do we not have the competition of international flights, we actually don't have the competition of some very large players in the marketing space now. So there's some really, really positive signs and positive things we can be doing to market right now. So from my view and what I've been advising my clients, and this is the same for my own business as well, there's three reasons why we market right now. For our customers, we want to be recalled first when we come out of this. So the only way you're going to be remembered is by having constant presence. So there's a lot of marketing stats, and I'm a big proponent that the difference between winning a customer or not is just the ability of the customer to remember you. So that's something I firmly believe, and that's why it's really important to keep things like your social media going throughout this. From a business point of view, and this is exactly the same for my business, I want to mitigate my loss. We lost a lot of clients, we lost a lot of work. The same if you're in accommodation or, in the food and beverage, you're not even able to trade. We need to mitigate that loss. And the best way to do that is to promote your product, so that when things change and when those restrictions lift, you are there top of mind and ready to go. And from an industry perspective, what we want to do is we want to take share. So when other people aren't promoting, that is the best time to be promoting. When they go dark, you automatically get the spotlight just by showing up. So it's an incredibly level playing field at the moment to get messages into marketing. Your leverage point with customers is also online now. So Hootsuite created this fantastic report. I put the link at the end for you. It's about 170 pages, but it's full of these global stats of how much people are using media right now. So what's interesting is that the average time spent on the internet has absolutely skyrocketed around the world. So if we're looking at Australia, we're looking at a 38% increase of time on the internet just through COVID. If we look at the different devices, every single type of device is up. Smartphones up 76%, laptops and computers 45%, because everyone is stuck at home and they're just attached to their devices. It's the only way that they can connect at the moment. The social media platforms are all up. Facebook had an incremental month-on-month rise of 70% of time spent on site. The average time on people's screen time went at one point up to 4 hours and 20 minutes in Australia. On your phone when you swipe and you get your screen time report, that 4 hours and 20 minutes is a huge amount of time to be spending on your phone, likely on social media, mindlessly scrolling. So you've got this opportunity to be connecting with your customer just through these devices. LinkedIn, which is interesting, they're up 26%. There's no data around this, but I presume it's because the unemployment rate is so high and it's such a valuable asset for finding new jobs in the professional space. So every single one of these platforms recorded a rise. No surprises, TV is through the roof as well. So Metro is up, regional is up. There is an absolute ski slope of users online. And new players have become favourite players. So Zoom had been, everyone probably had heard of Skype, but not everyone had heard of Zoom before this. Zoom's had more downloads now than Netflix has, which is absolutely astronomical. House Party joined just before, in response to COVID, and has recorded a 735% download rate. It's just incredible. So it's not just the usual platforms that we're playing with that people are becoming more accustomed to. But the news gets really good for anyone in the marketing spaces because viewership's never been higher. It sort of hits with the same thing that happens in a crisis. The ads never become cheaper because people pull their marketing. So all of your advertisers are wanting you to advertise through this at the moment. So as a bit of a case study, we've got an acquisition campaign in market at the moment for a client. So acquisition is just encouraging people to like and follow your Facebook page. And the reason we're doing this for this particular client right now is we want to build their audience so that when restrictions can travel, more people are in their Facebook audience that we can market material to and we can remarket material to. So it's a really clever piece of marketing that you could be doing right now is just building your audiences. So any normal day of the week, I'd be absolutely thrilled high-fiving the client to be looking at a 90 cents cost per click or cost per acquisition to get someone to follow that Facebook page. At its highest we're buying at 21 cents per acquisition at the moment. So we're getting, 3,000 new followers based off about $600 at the moment. So this is an incredible opportunity to be taking things into market and convert it to be able to convert people down the track. So there is huge opportunities in the paid space here. Because when everyone else goes dark, the spotlight is yours just by showing up. It's an incredible opportunity amongst all of this chaos and crisis. So in my career, I would say I've never statistically seen a better time to market because you've never had more people online or looking at their devices, and you've never had less competition because no one else is doing it, because no one really has the blueprint. No one's been here before. No one understands. Everyone's very scared, and understandably, about offending people and doing the wrong thing. So they've just shut things down. Your audience is literally trapped. It's an incredible opportunity to connect with them through this. So how do we do this? How do we get this right? And this is, I guess, to the point of someone put in the question is, what is the tone of voice that we need? Because we could all say that we've seen some really poor examples of comms through this. I know I have. And striking the right tone of voice has taken communications professionals a really long time through this crisis to actually navigate. And what I think is absolutely at the heart of this communications piece is understanding your audience's behaviours. And what I mean by this is, it doesn't matter. Any day of the week that you're talking to your audience, you'll find them in a completely different state. So using me as an example, you know, some days if you communicate with me, I'll be anxious. Other days I'll be completely burnt out by this whole experience. Some days I'm really bored. Some days I'm mentally drained. Some days I'm feeling really tech tuned in. I'm all over Zoom. I think this is fantastic. And other days I'm totally tech tuned out. You know, yesterday I had a quick chat with Mark, and I was so over Zoom. It was my 5th Zoom for the day. And, I've just spent too much time online looking at myself, not interested. Other days I've got cabin fever. Some days I love being at home. You know, sometimes I feel like the world's never been closer, but equally it's never been further away. Some people are loving slow living, some people are hating slow living, and some people just flip between the two. But so what's important is to know that your audience is in a constant mood evolution. But the one thing that binds them, or the one thing that they really want, is they want peace of mind. We don't want to be adding more stress, more anxiety to this current situation, because it's not fair to your customer to be doing that. So how do we do it? How do we market travel when no one's leaving their house? How do we communicate this gently? How do we take our messages into market? What does it look like? And I want to really focus this around 2 core pieces of marketing principle: the difference between awareness marketing and conversion marketing. So awareness marketing is the kind of marketing that builds your brand recognition. So that's just showing up, getting people to understand who you are and what you stand for. Conversion marketing is the kind of marketing that causes a transaction to buy your product. So if you were a hotel, for example, that's where we take, say a Facebook ad into market, or you do a Facebook post and you include your URL, but you don't just include your URL, you include the URL that is /booking and takes people direct to the cash register. So we're focusing here only on awareness. That is the only thing anyone in Australia can do right now, unless you're in a conversion space. If you're in online retail or e-commerce, absolutely, you're already in conversion. But for our friends in tourism, we're all sitting in awareness. All we can do is just encourage people that when they're able to travel, that they can choose us. So in the Google travel cycle that people talk about, all we're talking about is the dreaming and planning phase of travel. So if you're familiar with that, opposed to that booking travel, the booking phase of the travel cycle, which is the conversion point. So hibernation, the fact that we can't travel, this is not the time to sell much. We can't sell, maybe you might be able to convert the odd gift voucher or a forward booking, but we can't really do conversion. It's just a great time to be a good corporate citizen and show that you care and connect with your customers' pain points. So they were those emotions that they might be feeling: anxious, tired, frustrated, pent up. We just connect with those, which I've got to say, in all of the marketing that we've ever done, this is the best part to play in, because you're not selling anything. You don't have an ROI or a KPI that you're working towards, and it's really easy not to sound salesy or pushy when all you're doing is showing up and showing that you care. So it's a very lovely, light, happy place to be marketing, and it does make you feel good when you get to do this kind of stuff, less salesy. So how do you bring it to life? And this is where I really want to go through a lot of examples, because a lot of the questions were focused on getting that tone of voice right. What do I post? How do I do it? I don't even know where to start. So this section is for you. If you're confused and you don't know where to start, this is how you're going to bring it to life. And I want to preface it by saying this is not business as usual. Everyone's been, there's a lot of stuff floating around the internet saying, we're all in the same boat. We're not in the same boat. Everyone's in a different boat right now. And it's not business as usual. This is business as unusual. It's okay that you don't have a plan for this. It's okay that you haven't known what to do, because no one knows what they're doing here. What we're doing is we're just looking at how other businesses and brands have dealt with similar situations in the past and seeing how we can roll it out in this situation. So in my view, you just need to know your place. And it's not every post that you're posting about doesn't need to be about COVID-19. I don't know if you have rules in your family, or I'd love to know, like in the chat, if you've got anything like this. I know in my circle of friends, we've done it, or in the office, we have a no COVID-19 zone. I'm sick of hearing about it. It's very, it gets me down. It's very negative. It's very heavy. I love to check the news and see how things are going, but I don't want to bring that through to social media. People are looking at social media as a form of escape. They don't need to hear about COVID-19 from me, who's not a subject matter expert in COVID-19, the virus itself. Certainly communicating through it, but not, how we're doing and how we're benchmarking. That's for, economists and things like that to be able, and health experts to talk about. Your job is to listen to consumer sentiment or your customer sentiment, and you don't need big market research for this. Listen to an audience of one. That's yourself. If you're sick of thinking about COVID, or if you're sick of hearing about it, or you're sick of the same type of messaging, don't do the same messaging as everyone else. Take a different approach. Listen to how your customers are feeling so you can capture that. You need to give value to your customer. So I think a brilliant example of this is Disney released Frozen 2 in the early stages of COVID, and it was in response to it, but they never said it was. It was given as a gift to parents to give them some more time, and they built a lot of brand sentiment and brand equity by doing that. The other thing to be really aware of is just checking your tone, because if your brand's not funny, it's not the time to test out the jokes. You're looking for, yes, people are looking for lighthearted conversation, but it's not meant to be offensive or cause any sort of more angst amongst people. So let's look at some examples of what this might look like on your social media. And now I've really focused on social media quite deliberately, because I know that if marketing budgets have been slashed, we're not really looking at anything other than stuff we can do ourselves. And social media is absolutely that. It's only going to cost you your time. So this is a beautiful example, I think, from South Australia, and it speaks to this dreaming phase of the travel cycle. Now, I'm giving you a copy of all of these slides. They'll be sent out with the recording, so you can read this if it's a bit small on your screen or on the phone or something. But it's talking about we're dreaming of future adventures. What this post does is it gives people immediate action, and it gives them a call to action, which isn't to visit South Australia, but to experience South Australia at home. So they've got a wine delivery service. So I guess as a thought starter for your region, if you're not able to pivot, which a lot of people haven't been able to, and a lot of people didn't want to pivot either, and that's totally fine, how can you use your social media channels as a loudspeaker to promote other businesses in the area who did pivot? So is there a local supplier who is doing take-home deliveries? Can you give a shout out to that person or that business on social media to encourage people to still invest into the local economy? Because if we build consideration for the Murray River region as a whole, we're going to build an awareness for the region as a whole. Another example of content, it's a time for escapism. So what I like about this is we've got an example here from Anthropology. Today's daydreaming, of a lazy Sunday, and so Anthropology sells clothes. So it's just about, dreaming. It's a picture from another shoot. So how can you repurpose your existing content from existing previous shoots when people could travel? The way that you can phrase that is we're dreaming of, or another daydream, or flashback to. How do we do that? The other example I wanted to show you was from this Woodland House, which is a sort of B&B kind of thing in Oregon. What I really like about this post is it's got an escapism, but to a really distinct part of COVID-19. And this was a post from right at the start when people were actually looking to isolate in more remote and regional areas. So this was an invitation for customers to isolate with them and do long stay bookings, which, obviously this part of the travel cycle has passed, but I thought it was a really innovative way of bringing customers in. And it's something that we could really think about coming out of this, is the way they phrase this is what we know is people will be hygiene conscious. And I think the way they've drafted this post is really, really clever. And they've also, they outline their hygiene practices, which is something that, our customers will be really concerned about. So let's say you are in the accommodation space, including in your social media post a dot point list of how you're going to be responding to the cleaning of your facilities is something that you can just tackle straight on and give people that peace of mind straight away. So that's a really good one to have a look at after today. Content that inspires and uplifts. So this is obviously super cute, Rottnest Island, little quokka. It just makes you smile. You can just escape. it brings happiness to your feed. And this is the stuff that, as a consumer, you know, market audience of one, this is the stuff I love online. I've loved on this, like, give me animals any day. So I get it. We don't have quokkas. This is all very easy for me to put up and say, oh, the cute animals. But you do have sunrises and sunsets. And that's something that we need to think of, you know, social media like Instagram and Facebook is a global audience. We've got people all over the world. Yes, they might not be your target audience, but they could be, who are stuck at home in tiny little pokey apartments with, you know, 10 or 15 people inside them. And you're offering this big open sky, bright skies, total escape. You know, that to me is the sort of content that could inspire and uplift through this. Very, very simple sort of way to connect with your audience. I love this kind of example. This is content that offers value. So this one comes from Ingenia Holidays. So they know they've got the young family market. They know they've got parents at home with kids who are running out of ideas. So they've created this series. There's about 9 or 10 of these school holiday home ideas, a bingo card of little ideas that you can do with the kids. And it's performing incredibly well. So it's just been made on Canva. It's nothing fancy. But is there a DIY kit or a piece of value like this that you could connect with your audience? You know, if you've got the young family market or you'd like it, is there something, you know, that you can create for them? Or, you know, we know some schools will be going back. Is there a back to school kit or something that you can do that is the key to this is it has to be relevant to your product, which obviously for, you know, Ingenia Holidays, they do big 4 holiday parks. That is really in line with their market. You know, please don't make a colouring in book if you don't want young children at your property. You know, it has to be relevant. I love this content that's live. There's never been a better time to experiment with live content. So this example, Olive and June, so they are a USA-based nail polish company. And obviously at the moment you can't get to your nail technician. So what they're doing is DIY manicure kits. And I love live as a format to be able to do DIY. As a thought starter, you know, can you go live in your business? I think this really lends itself into the cooking space. But if, let's say, your accommodation or a tour or an event, you know, is there a way that you can do a walkthrough, say, from how close your business is to the main attractions in town? How can we take that DIY concept? You know, it is very clear, you know, in a manicure sense, but how can we do that in a more bricks and mortar sense? You know, is it a walkthrough of the town, how close you are? Is it, you know, is it a live Q&A with someone? You know, how can you tap into that technology and just experiment with it? Because there's never been a better time just to have a little play around with some of the tools that maybe you've been a bit scared of in the past. This is an example of content that's topical. So in Queensland, they lifted the restrictions so you could travel up to 50 kilometres. And so what Tourism Queensland, who they picked this up, would have been 10 minutes after the announcement was made, popped this one out, encouraging with people to explore their national parks within a 50-kilometre radius. And then they've included a few examples. So, you know, this post wouldn't have been timely if they posted it 2 or 3 days later. It was the fact it went up straight away just showed that they were absolutely watching it and staying topical on the matter. So, you know, for you, when news changes, how are you going to tap into that? How are you going to provide content immediately that supports it? Because it'll be a bit too late or it'll be too delayed to sort of wait till the restrictions are lifted to start to make what that reactivation content might look like. So as an example, in Queensland, picnics got the green light. So a lot of our clients went straight into market with blog posts or carousels of where you could have a picnic on their property to just really jump straight in on that topical content. Content that's timely. So Urban listed a brilliant example of this once the 50K rule came in Queensland. But what you could do, or what I'd encourage you to do at this point, is let's look at the destinations that are ahead of, I guess, the restriction lifting curve, because we're likely to have a very similar response in all of the states, or it's likely to be staged in very similar ways. So we can probably make some educated guesses. So looking at places like the NT or the ACT, what does that look like in those states? What's going to happen in, say, New South Wales or Victoria that you could copy or have that content ready to go for once those restrictions change? So have a little look at what those initial motivators will be for travel. So I know for a lot of our regional clients, it's going to be low fuel price. That should absolutely start to come through in some of your communication, is talking about you're not that far. It's never been more affordable to take a drive holiday. Those sorts of messages and those sorts of motivators are going to be big, for your customers in coming through this. I think this is a really important example, content that's instructional. A lot of people want to help, but no one has told them how. So this little cake example, the caption reads, if you're wondering how you can support a business right now, send someone a quarantine butter cake. It's giving them an example. So I'm thinking for the tourism industry, or for you, is there something you can do that's really clear and instructional? If you're wondering how to support a small business in regional Queensland right now, give mum a gift voucher for Mother's Day this year. You could sort of put people's minds at ease, give them that peace of mind, something along the lines of, due to these unprecedented times, we've extended all of our expiry dates instead of being 12 months to 24 months, so that you have can rest assured that you'll be able to explore our beautiful part of the world. So give people something to do, because you'd be amazed how many people want to help, but they just don't know how. And if you don't tell people how they can help, or how they can book, or how they can engage with you, you also can't be surprised that they're just not even sure. And so even just looking at some simple ways that you can put something into market, even if it's one little product, or like a gift voucher, or taking forward bookings, that's one way that you could sort of give people content that's instructional. I love content that tells a story. Storytelling is absolutely at the heart of the sort of marketing that we do, and I'm really passionate about it. And it's never been a better time to tell your story, because a story leads with empathy. And it's very easy to be empathetic right now. So just share exactly what you're doing and sharing how you're supporting people. So I love this example on the left. Many of you asked what we're doing to help during these trying times. We're offering blah, 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 and it sort of outlines how they're engaging with the community and what they're doing and who they're supporting. So I think for you, as a bit of a thought starter in your comms, is like, don't approach your caption in what can you do for me, but approach it in what can I do for you. And if you do it that way, you'll always hit that right tone, and it's not going to come across as salesy or pushy or any of those things. It's a really lovely way to sort of show that you care with your community. And beware of these pitfalls. So I think a lot of people press pause on their marketing and said, no, I'm not doing anything over this time because, it's too risky. But I think as I've seen this go on, I haven't actually seen too many people fall into terrible social media mistakes or communication mistakes, but for these three things. I've seen a lot of advertising go to the wrong market, which is a big problem when money's tight. You don't want to be wasting money on the wrong thing. So I've seen Facebook and Instagram ads for cafes in Perth and grocers in Melbourne, but I live in Brisbane, so that's a complete gross waste of time. I've seen some people become too salesy, particularly because we're in a position in hibernation. People can't travel right now. You just can't be too salesy about it. You can encourage people, you can be awareness, you can do calm content, you can make people feel like they're dreaming, but you can't be too salesy. And I think too much empathy can be quite heavy. And I do follow a couple of feeds where it's becoming a bit heavy. The reality is that I don't know. In fact, I don't have any clients who didn't have to make redundancies. I don't know any of my clients who haven't had to pare back staff. Everyone is running at best, an 80%. In of my clients, I think the best one off is still running at an 80% capacity, and that's because they can pivot into this takeaway space. But for most of them, they're lucky if they're even at 2%. So, but too much empathy and too much talking about their business and how hard it has been can make people feel quite heavy, and it doesn't really encourage people to want to come back and enjoy and experience your product. So that they're probably the three pitfalls that I can see in your tone of voice or your communications that you could potentially fall into, but they're very easily avoided. So if you've been worried and about you sort of butchering your communications or not doing it properly, please don't let that put you off, because these are the only three pitfalls that I've seen, and I think they're quite easy to avoid. So beyond social media, what else is important right now? So this is the 5-step action plan that I'm working on with all of my clients. Communicating your hours and obligations in light of the current restrictions is really important. The second thing is to create organic content that builds connection with your audience. So both those who already know about you and those who don't know you exist yet. Creating connection and touching base with your audience via your e-newsletter or getting your databases organized. Reviewing and auditing and planning your marketing materials to get them looking really, really tight for this reactivation. And promoting why you're relevant to come out of this. And we're going to spend all of webinar 2 on this exact point. So I don't want to labor it too much, but creating that story and promoting your relevance is really important to really win at that sort of reactivation and restart phase. So let's talk about communicating your hours and obligations, because this is a really simple one. And I've seen so many businesses just miss the mark on this. So everyone's Facebook page should have a pinned post at the top with their new hours or what they're doing. So if you're just doing takeaway, that should be at the top of your Facebook page. It should be on the top of your Instagram page. If you've got reduced hours, that should sit there too. Also update your Google My Business listing if you're working on reduced hours. You know, my team doesn't work on Fridays anymore through this crisis. We don't have the work for it. So that's got to be updated on the Google My Business listing. Otherwise, people will wonder whether you're operational if you don't put this stuff up. And if you are, this is a big barrier because we want to be capitalizing on what limited sales we can get, and it's by communication. Triple check all of your paid campaigns and automated posts have been taken off. If you use any schedulers on social media, just check on that stuff to check that they've been all either taken down or adjusted, because we don't want to put anything out into market that's just completely out of sync with what people are legally allowed to do right now. And just remove those grey areas for people. So it caused absolute chaos up here in Queensland this week when picnics got put on the table, and we had caravan parks calling us saying, well, can people have a picnic in our caravan park? And, the answer is no one knows. So we said, just put something up on Facebook if you're worried about people coming for a picnic in your caravan park, just put up your position and remove any of that grey area for people so you don't have to have those conversations with people as it happens. The second thing to do is build that content that connects with your audience. So although you might not be able to trade, it doesn't mean you can't connect with your audience right now. So if there's ever been a time to work on those blog posts or the things that maybe your SEO specialist or your web developer's been saying for years, now's the time to do it. If it's looking at, the copy or the words that you send in for the traveler's guide, if it's always needed a refresh, now's the time to look at it. Starting to look at what marketing materials you've got and how you can build more connection with your customer through them. So if you're sort of wondering with where to start with all of this, I always say start with your frequently asked questions, because if people are asking them, they can't find the answer. So serve people with those bits of information first. Send e-newsletters, and this is really important. A lot of people when this all went down, they went into absolute shutdown mode because, they had a lot of competing activity on the go. So they shut down their communications with customers via their e-newsletters. So this is a way that you can make things personal to people. You can show people that you care and show them that they're top of mind. If you don't have an e-newsletter, that's totally fine. Just go through your bookings. Let's say you're a hotel, look at who's been a repeat customer, send them a personal email. It doesn't need to be, a fancy integrated CRM or a MailChimp or anything like that. A simple email, or what I did at the start was just call all of my clients, which obviously is a bit easier. I'm an agency, opposed to, say, a hotelier who'd have hundreds of thousands of customers or thousands, depending on the size of your business, but even just a little bit of personal connection through this goes a really long way. What I would recommend you do is get your email list organized. If you don't have a database, now is the time to go through your Outlook contacts and start building one, or your previous bookings, or your visitor book, or your paper documents, however you're organizing your business, to start creating an email list. What I would recommend you do is start segmenting them. So that's just fancy word for people who live in Victoria, go in one list. People who live in New South Wales go in one list. People who live in Queensland go in one list. Because what we know is that we're likely to be lifted out of lockdown differently. So it's going to be really important if you want to have targeted communication to have a different send depending on where people live. I would recommend you audit your marketing materials and implement any tech upgrades. Okay, I get it. You probably don't, no one's probably got any money to be briefing the web developer and sending it out right now, but you can develop exactly what you would like it to look and feel so that when the cash does, or the cash flow comes back into the business, you can action those changes. But once you get busy or things get back to normal, I know how hard it is to sit down and actually get some white space to focus on this stuff. So I think it is, it's a perfect opportunity to do a bit of a competitor analysis. You know, does your website look as good as your neighbors or as your competitors? You know, is your logo up to spec? Is your social media looking good, or doesn't it look as nice as everyone else's? So we have online, we've got a marketing asset audit where you can assess yourself. It's a free resource, and I've got a link at the end of this where you can score yourself against all of these different marketing tools. And I ask you to be really critical on yourself and just see how you compare to other people, because if you can get this stuff in place now, when we come through into the reactivation mode, you'll be absolutely ahead of the game and at running at some pace if you've got all of your marketing looking really, really schmick. The fifth thing to do is to promote while you're relevant coming out of this. And as I've said, this is the topic for the next fortnights is that restore and reactivate phase. So it's wrong to just assume that because people can travel that they will. We need to give people a consideration to travel right now. And how we always do this in awareness marketing is it looks a bit like a funnel. So what we want to do is we want to build intention for people. Like the first stage of the funnel is we want to say we want people to not take a coast holiday. We want them to come inland. So that's our first bit of consideration. Once they come inland, we want them to go Murray River. Once they go Murray River, we want them to go to Mildura. Once they're in Mildura, we want them to go to this product. So we have to move people through the funnel. We can't just go direct to come to my product because we haven't built any of that consideration before there. And we have to get people to move down that funnel. And the only way we can do that is through consistent and constant messaging. As I said at the start, you know, we would be wrong just to sort of rest on our laurels and say, you know, everyone will want to take a staycation because they can't go anywhere else. And that is correct. People can't go anywhere else. So staycations are a given, or Australian holidays are a given. But there's also a lot of other tourism operators and a lot of other businesses who will be competing for this market share. And a market share where people, you know, will not have as much money as before. Maybe people have just said 2020, we're not taking holidays, even as they come out of this, because people will be, you know, as we get closer and closer, you know, to September, when things like JobKeeper come off, people's mortgages have to be paid again, people's insurance is coming back, all of those subsidies we've got on our energy bills, those sorts of things will all be dropping around September. That's when people will be really pinching, and we're about to enter probably one of our busiest periods in the lead up to Christmas. So we need to make sure that we are top of mind against that competitor set for that time. We need to promote why people choose you as well. So more on that in the next fortnight's session. So just something to sort of think about in this. That's the direction that we're going with this. Is this session is about getting things moving, and the next one is about, okay, people are now moving. So what does that look like? And if you're worried about any marketing, I love this example. There was this chip company in the UK called Emily's, and they launched right in the middle of COVID, and they bought all of this outdoor advertising, and they couldn't get their refund back because it was lost. So this is a startup company. They've spent an absolute fortune on out-of-home marketing, and no one has seen it. And they were lucky and smart enough to change all of their messaging, which has given them incredible reach online with these really humorous sort of ads. You know, our first ever poster seen by a runner and a pigeon, typical. And I just think this is an excellent example of a really clever marketing pivot. But this isn't going to happen to you. We're talking about social media, emails, and owned assets, the things that don't cost you any real money. So don't be worried or scared about this stuff. You know, it could be a lot worse. There's a lot of people who had locked in paid spends that have had to go through that. It hasn't been seen. So I've got a lot of resources that I used in building these slides on the best of how to market. Through this, we've got a lot of extra reading around this, which I'll share, because this stuff is complicated. And as I said, no one's got the final blueprint, because no one's ever been through a pandemic before. But what we can do is look to previous examples of things that have happened, like the recession, and how did people market through them in very similar sort of circumstances, although you could argue completely different circumstances at the same time, because people weren't locked in their house. So that's it. But I want to move on to questions, because we've got a couple in there. So first question, will this slideshow be available? Yes, this slideshow will be available after the session. So that's going to happen. Another question. Let me just read this 1 second. This is a great question. Just clarifying, please. Paid campaigns for awareness are okay, but paid campaigns for conversion should be turned off. This depends. So to the person who asked this question, I would say paid campaigns really depend on what you'd like to do. So the example I showed way back was a paid campaign for acquisition. So that was getting people to like and follow a Facebook page. So that, I think, is absolutely fine at the moment, depending on the creative. So the creative we've got with that, it's a destination marketing organization, and the creative is along the lines, like it's got very cute animals, and the captions along the lines of you might not be able to travel right now, but lucky there's no restrictions on armchair travel. Play along to follow our destination from afar, something like that. So that is an example of a paid campaign that's on at the moment. In terms of conversion, I think it would depend. If I sold dresses or earrings or anything in an e-commerce space, activewear, I would be doing paid campaigns for conversion every day of the week. Paid campaigns for conversion are totally fine in an e-com space. I would just be hesitant if I was in a tourism space as, let's say I was an accommodation provider, doing any paid campaigns for conversion right now, saying, book now, stay later. You could just run the risk of having too much community management at the end of that campaign, or it tying you up with silly questions about, not silly questions, understandable questions, but a lot of silly community management around the restrictions, which isn't necessarily your area of expertise. So if you, I'll just check the chat as well, but if you want to give me any more examples of what sort of business you're in, I could give you a bit more detail on that as well, if you'd like. So someone said some of our operators have been told to stop marketing on Facebook. So what do we say in the marketing messages? I think to that, and I'm not sure, I don't think that there's an issue with continuing to market on Facebook. I think that awareness should be how you're marketing at the moment. Hey, we're still here, dreaming of adventure. The time will come that you can travel again. So those sorts of messages should be what's on Facebook. In terms of community, I think the question's about how do you respond to people who perhaps say, oh, I can't travel here right now, or like, don't you know about the restrictions? I think that comes down to how you word and phrase the post is what I would recommend there. So I use a lot of, and if you see the examples that I've put in here, a lot of like dreaming of adventure, or we look forward to welcoming you when it's safe to do so. So those kinds of message just sort of negate all of that community management. But I certainly know from the accounts that I look after that we haven't had to do as much of that now. Certainly when we started, everyone was very quick to jump on Facebook and tell me that hadn't I heard of the restrictions, but everyone is very aware that we can't travel right now. So that's not really coming through in the community management from my end. Mark, there's a question for you. And it is to Mark. Is it true the whole of river is shut still with no estimates of operation commencement for the future? I'll give that to you.
Thanks, Hannah. So obviously, yes, at the moment we are still in our non-essential travel phase, and obviously we await for the outcomes of the federal cabinet meeting on Friday that hopefully will send some further indications of what the restrictions may look like moving forward. So at the moment, yes, and certainly as Hannah touched on, whilst there'll be a pent-up demand for people to travel, I think the actual time lag from when people will be able to or feel comfortable or confident to travel will take quite considerable time to rebuild as we reactivate.
So I've got a little more clarification on the paid campaign question. So it's a family-owned winery offering affordable wines. So in terms of Facebook ads for when you reopen, I wouldn't probably do anything to do with when you reopen as an ad just yet. I would definitely do an ad if you're doing takeaways or offering a delivery service, because that is a conversion point that can happen right now. Certainly I would look at Facebook ads for when people can travel. So I would start by looking at who your source market is and if they're within a travel restriction. So depending on where you're based, if people are based, within, if you can travel up to 100 kilometers and you're within 100 kilometers of your nearest source market, absolutely, I would do that as a Facebook campaign. But until people can, and you don't have a conversion point, I don't know that it's worth doing. But certainly acquisition and getting people to like and follow your page so that you can build up that audience base for when people can travel, I think would be a really sensible thing to do. But if you are available for takeaway online, I would be going absolutely bananas with the Facebook ads right now to get some sales and try and mitigate some of that loss. That's what I would do. Does anyone have any other questions that you want to throw down into the chat? We've got a couple of minutes left, or anything that you want. We'll send out another question and answer ahead of the next session, so I can make sure that I cover that. But if there's any burning questions or anything that, this is a great question. When the market opens, should we offer discounts? This I guess is a complex question, and I think this really depends on your business and the type of industry that it's in. My view is, and it really depends on how competitive it is when it comes back. So let's say you're in an accommodation space. I think there's always room for deals. I think people love deals. I think, but better than deals are packages, and that's what I would probably go with, is if we could increase the length of stay, that would be better. So if you're an accommodation provider, I wouldn't necessarily look at discounting your product or your service, but how can we get people to stay, in region instead of one night for 2 nights and build a bigger experience, so there's a longer tail for more businesses. And I think more than perhaps discounts, it's how do we add more value to the stay. So if you're an accommodation provider, perhaps the discount is not for the accommodation, but when you get, it's a value offer. So with your accommodation tonight, you get a, $25 voucher to use down at the local pub, because I think it's really important that as we come through this, we need to support each other and support the other local businesses around us. And that sort of goes to that point I said about, promoting, if you haven't been able to pivot or you haven't been able to trade, it is your responsibility. I believe truly it is your responsibility as another business owner to help support the other businesses who, even though they can trade, are probably still really struggling. And if we can get people to just move them down that funnel of consideration and see that there's some amazing things happening and some really busy businesses in the Murray River, we're going to come out of this a lot better. So that's my long short answer of offering discounts, is add more value and package. Anyone got anything else? Oh, wedding ceremony space. No, I don't think so. On the discounts there, I think it is still, it's people will always want weddings, and I think probably love has really been one of those industries that has triumphed and will triumph at the end of this. So I think in the wedding ceremony space, I wouldn't be offering discounts. Obviously, you'll need to play it by ear as you come out of this, but I think there's a lot of data around. The challenge with discounts is once you offer them once, people expect them forever. So how does that work? And we don't want to be getting into a race to the bottom situation. And final question, because we are at the 1 hour, and I'm conscious of your time, and so you're probably all very hungry. Should we all be looking to acquire additional Facebook followers in this time through paid, or let it happen organically? To be honest, if you could do either. It's a slow burn to do it organically, but if you had some cash flow or you had some marketing funds, you will get incredible results. You'll never get better results on acquisition than you will right now. So if building a Facebook audience so that you can sell into them when the time is right, or you can take something to market once people can travel, the best time to build it would be now, because the price is just it's just flash sale. It's incredible. So that's what I would recommend. It's got high return, but please only if you've got the budget to do it, that's what I would recommend. Perfect.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions as well, and for participating in today's session. I think there was some really useful tips and insights that Hannah's been able to provide, and we really actively encourage you to take those on board. It might only be one little element that you're able to implement or change, but if you can do that over the next week or so, and then our plan is through each of these webinars to leave you with some actionable items that you can take away and really put in place. So again, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks so much.
See you.